Great to have joining us now in our book talk segment a man who's written a very interesting and very thorough book about a man who's getting actually a lot of notoriety nowadays. He's a historical figure, of course. It's called Hamilton, an illustrated biography. We're joined today by Dr. Richard Sylla on the telephone. And Doctor, good to talk with you. How are you?
I'm fine today and glad to be with you.
Yeah, I guess Hamilton is getting a lot of press nowadays. I guess most people probably, at least in the New York area, know it from the Broadway show. But it's kind of interesting how he's become a figure of history that people are interested in now, isn't it?
Yeah, I think he's all the buzz around the country. I did a Phi Beta Kappa lecture tour last year, and I was surprised in places like Mississippi and California and Florida. You know, the students were talking about Hamilton based mostly on the musical, and so there's a lot of interest in him. And I tried to fill a gap by coming up with a modern biography, kind of lavishly illustrated, so these people who wanted more information on Hamilton could find out really what he stood for and what he was all about.
You almost can't think of two more incongruous things, Hamilton, American history, and rap music, but it works. So I guess that's what people are interested in, right?
That's right. I've seen the show 3 times now, and I would go again.
Oh, you've seen it? Okay. Yeah, it's a hard ticket to get, I understand.
Yeah, but I had some ins because I'm a Hamiltonian.
That's right. Well, yeah, you are a scholar of Hamilton. Of course, everybody knows he's on the $10 bill, and some of the history of him. I know he founded the New York Post. I grew up in New York, so he founded that newspaper, but really an interesting man, right? I mean, a lot of his childhood and upbringing, very interesting.
Yeah, the musical starts out by saying, how does a bastard, because he was an illegitimate child and an orphan, by the time he's 11, he's an orphan. Everything in life is going against him, but he's got a superior intellect, and people realize that, so they send him to the mainland, and then he's off and running. He's an important figure in the American Revolution, important figure in the drive for the Constitution, important figure in the first government under President Washington, important man in planning our military establishment, founder of the New York Post, really a fundamental thinker in terms of judicial review, the role of the Supreme Court in our society. I mean, there's just, things that we take for granted a part of our life now. Hamilton was really pushing for those when they didn't exist.
Yeah, I didn't realize until I looked through your book that he had a lot of that type of military experience, right? Where he led his group in the Army, didn't he?
Not only that, but he had a military mentality. I think, throughout his whole life, he seemed to be fascinated by armies. Some people thought he was a dangerous man for that reason, but in fact, he was saying we have to defend ourselves. It's a hostile world out there, and we need to be prepared for people will come and try to get us.
The monetary system, I mean, he had a lot to do with that, obviously, kind of almost laying a blueprint, right, for how the economic system is supposed to work anyway. It doesn't always work the way it should, but didn't he kind of lay out the blueprint for the way it has worked for most of the time?
He certainly did, and I view that as his major accomplishment, mostly because he was the only person who really understood modern finance in that era. Other people might have gotten the Constitution, or other people might have won the Revolutionary War, but Hamilton was the single person who seemed to understand modern finance at the beginning of our country, and he used that knowledge to, put in place the institutions we're familiar with now, like the Treasury bond market, the central bank, the U.S. dollar as the national currency, and the work he did as a government official led to the development of the banking system as states chartered more banks, and to the stock markets, and to the corporate system, too. I mean, Hamilton's Bank of the United States was a very large corporation, sort of a demonstration project on the virtues of corporations.
Didn't that kind of allow, that system, businesses to start up much easier? I guess more money was available, and that kind of set off the earliest boom, if you want to call it that, right?
Well, that's right. I mean, the U.S. quickly took to banking and securities markets, and these banking and securities markets financed, like New York built the Erie Canal with money borrowed in 1817, and the banks financed the New England textile mills, and, so finance is actually very important to economic growth, and Hamilton was one of the first people in history to realize that connection. A government is strong if it has strong finances, but an economy is strong if it has strong finances.
Was that kind of I know he was pretty well educated, he went to Columbia, but was that just kind of a natural ability you think he had? Obviously, he kind of pioneered it, so it must have been.
Yeah, I think he had a brain like a sponge. He could absorb huge amounts of information, but, some people can do that, but Hamilton drew most of the right conclusions, and he got himself into a position where he could actually use his knowledge and thought to implement policies. He was in the military arena, in the political arena, in the legal arena. So I like to say he was a rare individual who was a very deep thinker, but also a man of action who could jump into the arena.
Was he considered controversial at the time? Because, he did so many things. Was he a controversial type?
Oh, definitely, because he was a very forceful individual in promoting his own plans and then pushing for them as a political actor. And people like Thomas Jefferson and James Madison were against a lot of what he was doing. They thought we should be a nation of farmers and sell food to the rest of the world. Hamilton says, no, we have to industrialize and be a commercial economy, and that's the way the world is going. And I think history shows that Hamilton was right. But he was very controversial in his own time for pushing these things. And
to have that kind of forethought, because obviously there wasn't much industry or things invented yet to push it that way. So he had to think in his mind things are going to be invented to create that kind of economy.
Yeah, well, he was aware that there was an industrial revolution just getting going in Britain, and he thought it was a good idea for the U.S. too. So, he pushed for that.
Kind of interesting, though, more of a, he's such a modern type thinker, but the way he died is so old-fashioned, right? A duel.
It was. The people of honor in those days, if somebody said something that offended another person who thought he was a gentleman, then, you could try to get apologies, but if the apologies weren't sufficient, then you challenged the other person to a duel. And to maintain your reputation, you had to go to the duel. Hamilton, in fact, was against dueling. He lost a son in a duel 3 years before he himself died in a duel. And so he was very much against dueling, but to maintain his reputation, he thought he had to go through with the duel. I think he may have thought that Burr would be really stupid to kill him, so he wouldn't do it. And, in fact, Burr ruined his reputation by killing Hamilton. I think in the book I suggest that the outcome of the duel, Hamilton's death, might have been an unintended consequence, that Burr maybe didn't really mean to kill him, because certainly Burr's career was over when he killed Hamilton.
You wonder why they just didn't put on the boxing gloves and do it that way. At least nobody probably wouldn't have died.
That's right, and I say, the guns they had in those days, these dueling pistols, I've seen them, they were not very accurate weapons, and right. I think that Burr may have tried to scare Hamilton by shooting near him or hitting him in the leg or something, and accidentally he shot him in the belly, and Hamilton died from that.
Yeah, fascinating figure. Of course, he's on the $10 bill. I guess that's going to stay, right? Isn't there some thought they were going to change it?
Yeah, there was a controversy about it. A couple of years ago, the Treasury thought that it was a good idea to put a woman on the $10 bill, and the $10 bill was the next one they were going to remodel. But I think the success of the musical saved Hamilton, and now they're going to put a woman on the $20 bill, I think, right. Which is more appropriate, I think.
Yeah. Well, again, it's called Hamilton. It's an illustrated biography. You got a lot of great, obviously, the story part of it, but great illustrations of old New York in that time. So it's a really well-done book, Richard.
Thank you. I'm glad you think so, and I myself am a little bit proud of it.
Where can people, you have a website you want to direct people to, or where can they get the book?
Well, I'm going to set something up on Amazon. It's not quite done yet, but I think the book I know it's widely available at Barnes & Noble stores, and obviously at Amazon.com will be doing a big business in it as well.
Dr. Richard Sylla, thanks for joining us. Hopefully we can talk again, but thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. My pleasure to be with you.
I'm Stan Brock. 30 years ago, I formed Remote Area Medical to help people overseas. But then we found generations of families in America isolated by poverty from the health care they need. Together, we can take dental, vision, and medical help to 1 million adults and their kids, right here at home in the United States of America.
If you'd like to order the book we're talking about, please go to DougMilesMedia.com and enter the author's name in the Amazon search box. Thank you for listening. Please come back soon for more conversations here at DougMilesMedia.com. This has been a presentation of Doug Miles Media, all rights reserved. You can listen to or download previous programs at iTunes, Stitcher.com, or Doug Miles Media.